This Monday, Venezuela has begun a 7-day phase of stricter lockdown to contain the spread of COVID-19. Russia and the United States have begun talks on the extension of the Strategic Offensive Arms Reduction Treaty. Libya's UN-recognized Government of National Accord has denounced Egypt's threat of military intervention in the country. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. This Monday, Venezuela began a 7-day phase of stricter lockdown measures in order to contain the spread of COVID-19. Minister for Communications Jorge Rodriguez announced that special quarantine measures will be implemented in 10 states of the country. Transport between different states and regions is now suspended, as well as the subway service in Caracas. The railway service to Los Valles del Tuy in Miranda State has been replaced by regular overground transport for workers in economic sectors exempt from the lockdown. Likewise, activities in the 24 new sectors that had previously entered the phase of the flexibilization of measures are now suspended. Finally, Rodriguez called on the population to comply with the preventative measures. Iranian ambassador to Caracas, Hojatoyla Soltani, confirmed that the Golson cargo ship has entered Venezuelan waters. The ship is carrying food supplies destined for the opening of the first Iranian supermarket in Venezuela as part of agreements between Tehran and Caracas. The ship, which departed from the Iranian port of Bandar Abbas on May 15th, is already approaching Venezuela's main port of La Guaira. 5 Iranian tankers previously brought 1.5 million barrels of fuel to Venezuelan ports to help the country overcome the fuel shortage provoked by US sanctions. US President Donald Trump has stated he is willing to meet his Venezuelan counterpart Nicolas Maduro. The statement was made during an interview with Axios, which took place on Friday at the Oval Office in the White House. So far, the information has not been confirmed by official spokespersons. In addition, accepting the possibility of a meeting with President Nicolas Maduro, Trump indicated that he does not have much confidence in the opposition lawmaker Juan Guaido, who has failed in his attempts to seize power in Venezuela. In his highly anticipated memoirs, Trump's former national security advisor, John Bolton, claims that the US president periodically stated that he wanted to meet with his Venezuelan counterpart, Nicolas Maduro.
19 different versions of names. Many call it a virus, which it is.
In Brazil, social and political organizations took to the streets of the country's main cities to demand the removal of President Jair Bolsonaro. Trade unions, political parties and civil society continue to mobilize to reject the far-right president's administration. Demonstrators consider Bolsonaro a threat to democracy, the economy and the social stability of the country, and have also described his policy regarding the COVID-19 pandemic as genocidal.
Despite the COVID-19, we have to go out to the streets to fight for our rights and from the extreme right-wing fascist government of Bolsonaro. Out Bolsonaro. More than ever, it is necessary to reopen workers' organizations to occupy and confront, because the government of Bolsonaro is going to continue killing and is going to make Brazil the country with the highest number of deaths in the world. A very serious situation for all the Brazilian people.
And on Sunday, Brazil surpassed 50,000 COVID-19 fatalities, representing the second highest death toll in the world. The novel coronavirus is spreading fast across Latin America, with over 2 million cases now reported, and it has hit Brazil the hardest. On Sunday, the country reported over 600 more deaths, while there are already over 1 million confirmed cases. Brazil's figures are now only surpassed by those of the United States. Meanwhile, the second most affected country in Latin America is Peru, with more than 250,000 coronavirus cases.
Coincidiendo con una flexibilización vigente desde principios de junio que consiste en económicas seguidos por 7 días de cuarentena.
Mexico reported over 5,000 new coronavirus cases this Monday. Director General of Epidemiology at the Mexican Ministry of Health, José Luis Alomía, reported over 5,300 new cases for a total of more than 180,000. Meanwhile, over 1,000 COVID-19 fatalities are reported, bringing the death toll to over 21,000. The officials stressed that in the next few hours the number of new cases could increase, as there are more than 56,000 suspected cases. It should be noted that despite the fact that 15 states are on high alert, the country's health facilities have not collapsed. Peruvian authorities reopened shopping malls this Monday despite the large number of coronavirus cases. The country has now reported a total of almost 255,000 COVID-19 cases, while the death toll stands at over 8,000. On Sunday, over 3,500 new cases were reported and 184 deaths. It's worth noting that more than 10,500 patients are currently hospitalized, 1,100 of which remain in intensive care. Despite the health crisis, the government of Martin Vizcarra has authorized the reopening of malls and stores as of Monday, which must follow strict hygiene measures. Panama has 500 unemployed doctors amid a critical phase of the COVID-19 pandemic. This Monday, the Dean of the Medical School of the University of Panama, Enrique Mendoza, denounced that nearly 500,000 recently graduated doctors are unemployed, waiting for the call of the country's health ministry. Mendoza warned in an interview with a local newspaper that at this time, when there is a need to increase capacity to identify COVID-19 cases and ensure the traceability of contacts, the government and the health ministry have doctors waiting and at their disposal to support the fight against the virus. Mendoza recalled that it's striking that this workforce remains unemployed, as they have the required skills, having completed 6 years of studies plus 2 years of residencies. In Bolivia, the de facto government enacted a law for the holding of the presidential elections on September 6. The law, which was drafted by the country's electoral court, is a result of a political agreement between 7 of the 8 candidates in the race, including the political alliance of the de facto government, that finally decided to accept the election date. Several social and political sectors have stressed that the decision was taken after social movements put pressure on the de facto government, which they claim had generated a media campaign to postpone the presidential elections. And we have more stories coming up after this very short break, so don't go away. South. The Organization of Eastern Caribbean States has rejected the recent coercive sanctions of the United States against Cuba. The OECS issued a statement on Sunday in which it stressed concern regarding the decision by the United States to blacklist Cuba, which constitutes further tightening of the economic and financial sanctions against the country. The organization noted that the labeling of Cuba as a non-cooperative state will serve as a deterrent to commercial banks and international companies from doing business with the Caribbean island. The Caribbean organization also recalled that the blacklisting of Cuba by the US constitutes continued erosion of the progress that had been achieved in relations between the two countries under the previous US administration and undermines the stability, peace and security of the Caribbean region. The ambassador of Antigua and Barbuda to Washington, Ronald Sanders, has criticized the growing US hostility against Cuba's medical cooperation, which has escalated amid the COVID-19 pandemic. The Caribbean diplomat questioned an act introduced by US Congressmen Marco Rubio, Rick Scott and Ted Cruz to sanction Caribbean nations that have benefited from Cuba's solidarity. According to an article issued by Sanders for the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, the US senators have shown notable indifference regarding the health emergency that affects Caribbean countries. Sanders, who also represents Antigua and Barbuda before the Organization of American States, highlighted the impact of Cuba's health work and underlined that the presence of Cuban doctors in the Caribbean has existed for more than 30 years.
We sympathize with the families of these people who are the unfortunate victims of 2 mighty Category 4 hurricanes.
The Bahamas Ministry of Tourism and Aviation stated on Sunday that the country is now preparing for the second phase of the Tourism Readiness and Recovery Plan. The plan will begin on Wednesday, July 1st, and allow for the resumption of international travel to the Bahamas. According to the ministry, the plan will advance in response to COVID-19 trends, but some of the guidelines in place include having all visitors presenting a negative COVID-19 test upon arrival, conducted within no more than 10 days. Meanwhile, select individuals will be exempt from testing, which includes children under the age of 2, private pilots, and Bahamian citizens returning from English-speaking CARICOM countries. This Sunday saw the start of US President Donald Trump's re-election campaign in the city of Oklahoma. The first rally was tarnished by the low attendance in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. Over 6,000 people went to the stadium for the rally, but the venue has capacity for nearly 19,000. After it was announced that Trump would be holding his rally in Oklahoma, Mary Jo Lope, a TikTok subscriber, began a social network campaign to get people to book tickets to Trump's event and then not attend, a move which seemed to have worked well.
When you do testing to that extent, you're going to find more people, you're going to find more cases. So I said to my people, slow the testing down, please. They test and they test. We got tests that people don't know what's going on. We got tests. We got another one over here. The young man's 10 years old. He's got the sniffles. He'll recover in about 15 minutes. That's a case. Add up to it. That's a case. That's a case.
Russia and the United States have begun talks on the extension of the Strategic Offensive Arms Reduction Treaty, known as START 3. The Russian delegation arrived in Vienna for the talks with the US on their last major nuclear weapons agreement, against a backdrop of growing tensions and differences over whether they see any value in arms control at all. US President Donald Trump insists that China should be involved in the talks on New START, the treaty that caps US and Russian nuclear warheads, because he says up until now Beijing has had a free pass to do as it likes in developing its weapon systems. The World Health Organization's Director General Tedros Adhanom told a virtual health forum organised by Dubai authorities that the greatest threat facing the world is not the coronavirus itself, but the lack of global solidarity and leadership.
That a devastating epidemic can start in any country at any time and kill millions of people because we're not prepared. I said that we do not know where or when the next global pandemic will occur. But we do know that it will exact a terrible toll, both on human life and on the global economy. But no organization and no country can fight this pandemic alone. Only by working together will we overcome this global threat. The greatest threat we face now is not the virus itself. It's the lack of global solidarity and global leadership.
A spokesperson for China's foreign ministry said on Monday that the nation resolutely opposes the use of the origins of the novel coronavirus to stigmatize any country. The declaration comes after US President Donald Trump referred to COVID-19 as Kung Flu during a rally.
We have noted the relevant remarks. The WHO and international community explicitly oppose linking the virus to any specific country or region and oppose stigmatization. The nature of Meng Wanzhou's case is completely different from that of the Canadian citizens. Anyone without prejudice is clear on the issue that Meng's case is a serious political one. The aim of the US is suppressing China's high-tech companies and Huawei, and Canada is playing the role of an accomplice to the US. We strongly urge Canada to redress its mistakes as soon as possible and immediately release Meng Wanzhou and allow her to return to China safely.
Authorities in Beijing have set up mobile inflatable laboratories to help cope with the recent outbreak of COVID-19 cases in the Chinese capital. On Monday, more than 200 cases of this latest outbreak were confirmed after the discovery of 9 new cases over the last 24 hours, the lowest tally since June 11th. Experts note that the infection rate in Beijing will not affect the third phase of human clinical trials of the country's 5 candidates for a COVID-19 vaccine. And China's National Observatory on Monday renewed a yellow alert for rainstorms across the country for the next 24 hours. According to the National Weather Centre, from Monday to Tuesday, heavy rain and rainstorms are expected in many regions, some of which will see up to 60 millimetres of hourly precipitation, accompanied by thunderstorms and strong winds. Local authorities were also ordered to take necessary precautions against possible floods, landslides and mudslides. Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić declared a landslide victory for his ruling party in a parliamentary election tarnished by a boycott by much of the opposition. Vučić, who did not run for office himself, heads the Serbian Progressive Party, which has been in power since 2012. According to local media, the sweeping success was helped by a boycott from the country's main opposition camp, which announced the elections as neither free nor fair. Despite the opposition's stay-at-home campaign and lingering concerns about the coronavirus, turnout was not dramatically lower than normal, at slightly less than 50%.
It means that the people have understood and that they know what responsibility and seriousness they are asking for in the future. But it also means that the people are asking us to change, to be much better than what we have been up to now, to bring to the forefront young people that people could not see up to now, and that we put even more energy into our work.
And we're taking one last very short break now, so stay with us for more. Welcome back to From the South. Libya's UN-recognised government of national accord on Sunday condemned Egypt's warning of a possible military intervention in the country, calling it a declaration of war. On Saturday, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi warned that if pro-GNA forces advanced on the strategic city of Sirte, it could provoke a direct intervention by Cairo. GNA forces have stopped their advance outside the coastal city, a key access point to Libya's main oil fields, which remains under the control of Marshal Khalifa Haftar and his Libyan National Army. The GNA statement comes on the eve of a virtual meeting of Arab League foreign ministers to discuss the situation in Libya, a meeting in which the GNA declined to participate. In Tunisia, protesters demanding jobs in the energy sector blocked roads on Sunday after security forces arrested an activist. For weeks, demonstrators at a protest camp in the southern Tataqueen region have demanded authorities make good on a promise made back in 2017, when they said they would provide jobs in the gas and oil sectors to thousands of unemployed citizens. The protesters blocked roads around the El Kamor pumping station to prevent tanker trucks from entering the facility. According to the governor of Tataqueen, Adel Werji, protests turned violent after the arrest of an activist wanted by authorities and after security forces used tear gas on the demonstrators. Across the African continent, the number of COVID-19 cases has surpassed 300,000. According to the Africa Centres for Disease Control and Prevention, the number of deaths caused by COVID-19 in the continent has risen to over 8,000. Meanwhile, the number of recovered patients stands at more than 146,000. The continent's worst-hit nation is still South Africa, which has recorded a third of all confirmed cases. Malawians will return to the polls on Tuesday for a rerun of the presidential election. This comes 5 months after the Constitutional Court annulled the results of last year's vote. Incumbent President Peter Mutharika had initially been declared the winner of the May 2019 vote with a slim majority. However, opposition leaders challenged the results in court, citing massive irregularities. Judges agreed and nullified the results back in February and ordered a repeat of the election. The vote will pit the current president against Lazarus Chakwera, who has united the opposition under a coalition looking to unseat the ruling Democratic Progressive Party.
This electoral commission has been in office just about 2 weeks. I have been impressed by the manner in which they have, so to speak, hit the ground running. And I have confidence that they want to do what is right, protecting the rights of Malawians as they make their choice.
Southern separatists in Yemen seized control of the strategic island of Socotra on Sunday. The move deepens a crisis between separatists and the government after the failure of a power-sharing deal in areas beyond the control of Houthi rebels who control the capital, Sana'a, and much of northern Yemen. Socotra Island, located off the Horn of Africa about 200 miles from Yemen, lies close to important shipping routes and has a unique flora and fauna. The island has largely been spared the violence that has ravaged mainland Yemen since the start of the Saudi-led military intervention. Nigerian doctors in state-run hospitals have called off a week-long strike over welfare and inadequate protective equipment as new coronavirus cases spike in the country. The strike by the National Association of Resident Doctors, which represents some 40% of Nigeria's physicians, began last Monday but had excluded medics treating coronavirus patients. The organisation had called the strike over a range of issues, including the grossly inadequate provision of personal protective equipment and calls for hazard pay for those working close to the virus. Other demands focused on improving general welfare and protesting layoffs.
The public hospital doctors are also unhappy about dismissals and reduced nation with 200 million inhabitants has recorded and 420 deaths as of Monday, June than 800 health workers.
Sudan has issued a warning against escalation and urged further negotiations with Egypt and Ethiopia over the construction of a controversial dam on the Blue Nile River. According to the Sudanese Minister of Irrigation and Water Resources, Yasser Abbas, the signing of an agreement is a prerequisite for Sudan before filling the dam. Meanwhile, Ethiopia has declared plans to start filling the dam next month, regardless of whether a deal has been reached. The $4.6 billion Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is more than 70% complete and promises to generate much-needed electricity for the country. At Egypt's request, the Arab League is due to discuss the issue at a virtual meeting of foreign ministers on Tuesday. And we've come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And you can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Katrina Goss, and thank you for watching.